is worth twice as much as the book. I kid you not. I don't know what the deal. Well, it's because collectors want how the book was first introduced by the publisher into public, and it came with a dust jacket, so they want the dust jacket, and they want it in good condition. And this particular book I picked up recently at a Goodwill. I mean, just really recently, and I think I paid 25 cents for it. All right, bear that in mind. 25 cents. And I have not put yet the a Mylar cover protector on it, but I did look to see if the price was still there, because how many of you, if you've bought books to give as gifts, you'll cut across here, to remove the price. Well, that's called a clipped jacket, and it lowers the value as far as collecting goes. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is look on the copyright page. And this was published by C.P. Putman and Sons. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. But it does say that it was printed in the United States of America. The copyright is 1988, printed in the United States. And the next thing you want to look at, because 1988 makes it vintage, all right? But you want to look at what's called the number line. And some publishers have other ways of indicating this. What this is the printing. Because, for instance, when this book was first printed by by Putnam, well, Clancy was already an established author, and they knew it would sell well. So they probably, the first printing, which that one indicates right there, the first printing could have been 1 million books, that very easily. But let's say that this Tom Clancy was a new author, and let's say this was his first book, and the publishers don't have any publishing or selling record yet of that author. They've not proven themselves. So that first printing, the first time they print it and send it out to stores to sell it, let's say they only printed 5,000 books or 10,000, and that does happen. It's a small number. And in fact, I can't remember exactly, but J.R. Rowland's first printing of the very first Harry Potter book, in Great Britain now, not in America, but in Great Britain, was very low. It seemed like it was 1,500 books. I mean, they just didn't know that the book was going to take off. So obviously it did, and they had to reprint more. That became the second printing, and the third printing, and the fourth printing. And this particular book got up to at least 10 printings. And don't that's for this genre and this particular author, it might be unusual for it to get over having been printed 10 times, because probably each time they're printing 1 million books. So that's a lot of books, all right? But you can see, I've seen books that it'll say maybe this number line's not down there, but it would have like a 40 or 60 or 38, a number, 38. Well, that meant it was in its 38th printing. And how many of you remember the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown? That thing got up to like 78 printings. They just couldn't believe that it was selling like it was, and they weren't eager to, they didn't know, should we print another 10,000, another 50,000, another million? And they kept hedging with it, and it got up to, way up into the number of printings. Okay, but as a printer, as a collector, sorry, as a collector, you want that first one. So when you open up the book, you look at the copyright date, and then you look down here, and if there is a one, you're holding. And I knew when I picked this up that it was a first printing of this book. This is the book you want that's most valuable as a collector. And it didn't have any marks on it. Sometimes a bookstore, if it had got made its way to Goodwill from a big box store like Barnes and Nobles, at certain point in selling the book, they pull all that's left on their shelves, and they'll mark it with put a little dot with a magic marker. How many of you have seen that? Or a slash, or they make a mark on the edge, either the top or the bottom. That's called I think it's called a rejoinder mark. There's a name for it, but you can't miss it. It's a little magic marker, and sometimes they just slash it with red. I hate that. That devalues the book. Oh, I can't tell you how much it devalues the book, even if it's a first edition, first printing. Now, let me say this. When you're looking at books that are listed for sale, like on eBay, they'll put first edition, and it's a novel, okay? First edition, exclamation point, like, wow. Well, guess what? All fictional work, all novels are first editions. Uh, I have said that before to people selling books live and live auctions, and they'll not knowing, they'll pull something like this off their shelf, and they'll go, look, it's a first edition. It says first edition, and a few times I've said, well, all novels are first editions, and they'll go, what? Like I've just said something outrageous, but it's true. Think about what a first edition is. The author writes the book. It's his first edition. Now, if the publisher were to decide, we need to republish this, and author, you need to go in and make some changes, uh, and making corrections is not the same as making changes to the content, but how many would have maybe have advised Harry to go in and make some changes about his book, The Spare, and take out stuff, that had been offensive to his family? Well, if he did that and the publisher reprinted the book, The Spare, it would be called a second edition. Well, that's extremely rare in the publishing of fiction. It's maybe only happened one or two times throughout the history of publishing. Well, what does second edition mean? Second editions come into play with nonfiction books. It's like anything that's nonfiction, a history book or textbook, something scientific, it's nonfiction. And the second time that the publisher decides to publish it, it either will come out as a revised edition, or a second edition, or a third, or a fourth. How many have seen textbooks that are on up there to 20th edition? And so what does that mean? It's, especially if it was history or science, or a health book, it's been the original writing has, when they go to reprint it, they want it updated. All right. So when they make changes to the original text, that becomes a second and a third and a fourth and fifth generation. Is everybody clear on that? Because that's a real source of misunderstanding, and especially if you're looking for books, to buy yourself, don't be misled when they say, this Tom Clancy, the Cardinal of the Kremlin, it's a first edition. And I'm going, okay, all right. But is it a first printing? Because the difference in price and value between a first printing and a second printing, or a 10th printing, is a lot of money. It's the first one that is worth the money. Now, I'm going to go to a second step and say, for instance, J.R. Rowling, all right, the Harry Potter series. Um, the very first time it was printed was by a British publisher. Okay, so you have to know something about the book. If it was printed here in the United States by an American publisher like Putnam and Sons is, but is this the first time it's appeared in print? Is this the first? Well, you sometimes have to do a little research, because there are some novelists who first published in England. I'm thinking of The guy that wrote Russia House and The Spy Who Came In From the Coal, John le Carre. He's a British author, but his books sell quite widely here in the United States, and there have been people who have thought they had a first of a John Carey book like The Russia House, and but it's not. It is a first edition of the American publisher, but it's not the very first printing, very first imprint of that author's writing out there in the world. That would be with the British press. So the J.R. Rowling book, you have to, if you want the most valuable one, you'd have to look for the British printer. I can't think who the publisher is right now, but I can just tell you that a first of that is like what, 40, 50, 60,000 dollars. It's pretty pricey because if you remember, I said there weren't very many printed at the time, and value is associated with rarity. How many are out there in the world? How many are available? The more rare the book is, obviously it's worth more. All right, so that's something that you have to watch for. I'll tell you a little story about John le Carre. Um, his as I said, his books were first printed in England. And years and years ago, when I was first learning about collecting rare and first editions, I had gotten turned on to it by reading um, a non-fictional book that was a autobiography by this young couple, Larry and Nancy Goldstone, that was just their personal account of discovering the world of rare and first editions. They avid readers as a married couple, kind of, very well educated young couple, and they'd sit around reading all the time. But they would buy paperbacks of the classics. If they wanted to read Pride and Prejudice, they'd buy a paperback because they were frugal. They didn't particularly care about having the hardback. But one day they found themselves in a used bookstore, and they asked about a certain book, and they said, "Well, do you have it in paperback?" And the bookstore owner said, "Why do you want the paperback? Let me show you a used hardback of the same book and it's actually worth more." And so they actually learned that they could spend almost the same amount of money that they spent on a new paperback, put the same amount of money in a used hardback, and actually have something that was of value that could be resold later. They could get their money back. Whereas, as you know, paperbacks, you pay 14, 15, $20 for a paperback. You turn right around and sell it. You can maybe get a quarter or 50 cents, 75 cents. That was like a no-brainer to them. But then they learned about what a first edition, first printing was, and they were sold then. Well, they wrote stories about that, the whole series of them, and I just fell in love with the Goldstones, and I've read everything they've written. It turned me on. So I actually looked up the Association of Antiquarian Booksellers just in my research and learning, and found that there was the president of that association was Peter Stern. And Peter Stern had a bookstore of used and rare books, antique and rare books up in Boston. Well, I had to be in Boston for a conference, so I thought I'm going to check out his bookstore. So I went there, and he was very generous and kind, and we talked. I told him I was just starting to learn about such things. He opened his safe up, and he took out copies of Hemingway that were first edition, first printings, and these beautiful leather boundings, and he put white gloves on my hands and let me touch them. I held one Hemingway book that was worth over $48,000. And I'm telling you, I was just blown away. Well, guess what? The doorbell indicating somebody had come in the store tinkled, and as Peter looks up and he goes, "John, so nice to see you. When did you get into town?" Well, it was John le Carre, y'all, all the way from Britain, had come in to see Peter, and he tells Peter, he said, a little sheepishly, he said, "I'm trying to find first editions of my books." And Peter said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I've given away just about all of mine, signed and autographed, and given them away. And now in my old age, I'd like to have some of those first back in my own collection." So they laughed about all that. And Peter said, "Well, the only book I've got," and he led him to it, he said, "was The Russia House." And he pulled it off the shelf, and John said, "Oh, I've already got that one. Do you not have this, that, and the other?" And Peter said, "No." He said, "But I'll jot it down. If I see it, I'll contact you." Well, John then left. So I went over and oh, before he left, I went over and picked that book up, and I said to Peter, I said, "Well, is this for sale?" And he said, "Well, yes, of course it is." So I said, "Well, I'd like to buy it." And he said, "Great." And Mr. LeCarey's standing there. So I turned to him and said, "Would you autograph it for me?" How many of you know if this book was autographed by Tom Clancy, it'd make it worth so much more? So, y'all, the world of book collecting is fun. It's a lot of fun, and let's. I have not done this yet, but I want to show you how to look this up. Let's go to. Let's just do it on eBay, and we would type in uh, Tom Tom Clancy, and the title, "The Cardinal of the Kremlin, not Dremlin, Kremlin, Kremlin. And I'm going to put first, and see how that's written, first/first. That's kind of the abbreviation that's used. Let's see if there's any out there to begin with. All right, we see one that sold. Can y'all see that? There's one that sold just the other day for $14.57, and they paid $6.13 shipping. And I think that's the same cover. See the blue and the blue? All right. And now there's one that's got a different color. Do you see that? See the different color on the dust jacket? It's saying it's a first edition, first print, 1988. Hmm. And there's something wrong with that one though. Look what it sold for, $3.99. All right, here's another one that sold recently. First edition, first printing. Sorry, that's what all it says. For $12, and they paid $6 shipping. There's something about this that's not right. This one right here, see, it keeps bringing consistently a low amount. Well, here's one, though, that did bring. Let me tell you, though, first of all, eBay is, as you know, the wild, wild west. And one word of advice, if you're going to buy used in first editions, is you may have to experiment at first by, if you want to start doing this, buying one and get to know the dealer, the eBay dealer. And if the book is exactly what they said it was, and you have found that it was a fair price, then stick with that dealer, and you can ask them to look for certain things that you might want to have. As a collector, I'm talking about as a collector, and because I've done it enough that I can tell you there's a lot of stuff going on and this is about everything other than books. It's the same with jewelry. You just, unless you know the person and have dealt with them before, you do take a chance, especially if you're spending big money. Just like my dealer in England, I would never have spent the kind of money that I spent today if I didn't know her and know if she says it's this, it is this, that I can trust her. So that is important. And there are other places, other databases you can go to also for books, and one of them is, let me just go there now, and we'll look at it together, because you might find this site interesting. It's not going to be any different is from eBay as far as being able to trust or know the dealer, but it will give you what it is it's a database of all books that are out there. So let's find this Tom Clancy book that's in every bookstore, not just eBay. So I want to go to bookfinder.com is the name of the company, and you can write that down, and anybody can do this. All right, but I will tell you that you have to type it in exactly right. It does not have a tolerance for misspelled words. Tom Clancy is the author, the Cardinal of the Kremlin. All right, I don't have to have the ESBN. I do want to put that it's used, a first edition, and now getting into signed. I'm not going to click that, but just know if it's signed, it's worth even more. And I want more search options. I want hardcover, and no, I think that's enough. Let's ask it to find the book. Now it's going to search databases that include eBay, but it's going to include like Abe and Alibris and other smaller book dealers. And so this is the site I go to as a book dealer, where I tell y'all that I can usually find whatever, if it's out there, I can find it. And it's because I'm using a site like this. There's a couple of them. All right, Tom Clancy, let's just click on that first one, the Cardinal and the Kremlin, and see what comes up. We're going to see one thing right off. We're going to see how many of these are out there available. That will indicate rarity. Well, look, it's a pretty high number, 308. I don't know if y'all can read that, but there's 308 of these out there. Now, not all of them are first. No, we did put down first edition, didn't we? Didn't we put that in the search criteria? Hmm. All right, what I usually do is the first price over here that it's showing is $6.39, and that is through Abe Books. So I'm going to scroll down all the way to, and look here, there was 308 copies. So I'm going to go to the very last page and go all the way down to the very last book and see what it says. All right, I don't know if y'all can read that, but I'll read it out. It's by Putman. All right. Was that the same publisher? You got to compare apples with apples. So I'm going to look at the publisher. Yeah, it was Putman, wasn't it? Yeah, Putman, 1988. Fine, signed by the author, first edition, first printing, full number line with number one showing. Signed on the half title page, author's name only, no inscription. How many of you know if somebody has written down in there, Merry Christmas, Dad, enjoy reading this, and dates it? That's an inscription, and it actually takes away from the value of the book. It's describing what the cloth of the book looks like, which is without the dust jacket. It says it's black boards with very fine, sharp corners. It's describing now the condition, and there is a set of standards where if one person says it's in excellent condition or near fine or very good, those terms mean something. Just like with the postcards we looked at in my last show, looking at condition criteria. The spine's a plus spine, very bright, complete, gold lettering. See the gold lettering? So this is the same book that it's describing, except this copy is signed. And let's see what it's showing. I don't know if y'all can see that, but it's selling for $683.95. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to get that, but that's so these aren't sold comps. This is what the dealers are asking. But that's a nice tidy amount. Now, what I would do is scroll all the way back until I find the first one in the description that is not signed. But it still has the jacket, it's still got the number line, everything else, but it's just not signed. And then I'd look over here to see what that price is. Now I'm not going to take your time up to do that, but that's how I would figure out the value of the book. Well, then I have to decide, okay, that's the value, but where am I going to sell it? And can I get that amount? And let's just say if this book came up with a value of even, let's say, $50. I believe it's going to be more than that, but let's just say $50. What are my chances of selling it to our market for $50? I don't know. Until we develop, the collectors group on here that's wanting to buy vintage and antique books. Now, this is vintage, not antique. Um, but so you've got to figure out your market. So this is what I will do. I will list it on eBay, and then I'll cross list it over here on Lilyworks Antiques and Collectibles because it is a collectible. And we just begin to see. You never know. People coming in to see our platform all the time will say, "Hey, I've been thinking about starting a collection of books. Well, I like Tom Clancy, or my husband likes Tom Clancy," and that's how collectors get started by finding an author that they particularly like, and then you set about to get one of everything they've written, and not just one, but the first edition, first printing with the dust jacket in good shape. And if I can find a signed copy by John Le Carey, right? All right, that's how we do it. All right, now I told y'all that that's the first thing when we think about vintage books. Y'all, I have got. Ta-da! Look over here. These are all different kinds of books that are not novels. There's some, I don't have any of my antique books. I do have antique books dating back into the 1700s, okay? But 1 hour is not long enough to share all this. But a couple of things I want to point out, because this may be where any of you that are wanting to start selling, because you can pick these up at Goodwill. What did I tell you? I got this for 50 cents. And I'm going to make at least, I should make it. Let's say I sold it for 20. I've made $19.50. That's a good bit of profit sitting there. All right. This book, you may recognize the name Isaac Asimov. He's a very famous science fiction writer. The title of it, The Rest of the Robots, but the book that he's most famous for is, of which this is part of the series, is the book I, Robot. There was a movie made by that title, I, Robot. Right now, with robots and everything that Elon Musk is doing with the new robots that are out and talking about AI and all that kind of stuff. Well, Asimov, they were before their time writing about all of that. So this little book is very collectible. Now, when I went to research it, though, I was aware of the fact that it's a library copy. See that? It was in originally this library. And so, in the world of books, a library copy devalues the book tremendously. For collectors, it devalues the book. It really, if this book were worth $100, with that library marking in it, it's probably going to be less than $10. That's how much it devalues the book. So unless it was a rare Hemingway sitting with a library marking that has made its way out of the library, been sold and passed through hands, and shows up, maybe that book would be worth more, even though it's a library book, but not your average book. And the guy that well, I won't get into that. Anyway, I've researched this one and have determined that $25 is what I need to ask for it. So if you see it listed, that's what it's going to be. But just know, from a collector, uh, really doesn't want to deal with it, and I may end up having to cut that amount. The only reason why I've got that on there is when I looked up, it has sold without the dust jacket for $27. one in near fine condition, which this is not, sold for $87. Now, a library copy. And so I kind of split the difference with 35 as an ex-library, and I lowered it to 25 just so I could move it. But I think it's because of the subject matter and because of it being this author that a library book would bring that much. Now, the next book you might get all excited about, Gone with the Wind. Who wouldn't like to have a first of Margaret Mitchell's The Gone with the Wind? Well, this was my mother's. And I knew, even before looking at it, because it was my mother's, that it was going to be a book club edition. That's about as bad as being a library edition as far as value is concerned. And once you start studying books, you'll know that most of the time, not always are they so clearly marked right there, like this one is. Sometimes you have to look for markings that are actually there's a marking that they stamp into the binding to identify it as a book club edition and not the regular printing. And so you have to be careful. You'll notice this doesn't have a price up here. So that's your first clue when you're looking at Goodwill and you're opening up books. If there's not a price listed, then it might be a book club edition. And it'd be best to just put that book back and pick up the next one and find one that's not. But this book's pretty famous, and I have found out that even with everything I just said, it was published in 1936 by Macmillan, the same company that published the regular book. That it on Worth Point that I showed y'all last hour, that it sold last May without the dust jacket now for $94.80. All right, so this book still has some value to it, even though it's a book club. But what would it be? How much? Let's just look. Let's look here on Bookfinder. Let's just out of curiosity. I haven't done this before, so let's just see. Margaret Mitchell, Gone with the Wind. And let's put used and first and hardcover and go find it. Go find that book. This is a huge database, y'all. Very, very good website. All right, there's a long list. Let's just click on the first one. That's what I normally do. And out of all the books available, there are, again, 338, which is quite a few. Remember, Macmillan Company is the publisher, so that's the first thing we're looking at. And we're looking for the date, 1937. All right, this is a book club edition, hardcover with dust jacket. And this is somebody on eBay has got a listing for $12.74. All right, and here's another eBay, and they're going up in price. Let's go all the way to the end, like we did before. Let's go all the way to the end to see the most expensive. The most expensive one, hopefully, will be a signed copy. 338. There it is. The last one says New York, 1938. Good reprint. Reprint of the 1936 first edition. Original gray cloth stamped in blue and dust jacket. It's given the size. Denoted in pencil number 1. This was the assistant director, Eric Stacy's copy, signed by David Selznick, the director, Victor Fleming, this is of the movie, and 28 members of the motion picture cast, including Vivian Leigh, Clark Gable, and Olivia de Havilland. Wait a minute. Eric Stacy has added his own signature in pencil. Okay. Well, that book is on sale somewhere for $85,000. All right. Well, that's got a lot of signatures on it, right? Let's see if we go back to one that's not signed. I don't know how far we'd have to go back. All right, that one's not signed, and it is the first printing. It's got all the right things about it. I'm looking at the description, and it is the first printing, first edition of the original book, $35,000. Y'all, this book, that book that's worth 35,000 is sitting in somebody's attic or sitting in some granny's shelf. This wasn't written that long ago, 1936. There's still books out there. There's still copies of this out there. So, talk about a treasure hunt. That is one. All right. Now let's move those aside. And real quickly, I'm just going to tweak your interest. Cookbooks are a great source of income, and but you've got to research which ones sell. Even these local ones, like this is St. Louis cookbook, and it's used and everything. I have boxes and shelves of cookbooks, and they do sell well. So just you've probably got them in your kitchen. Um, I am presently listing right now, so I'm in Georgia, stuff off my dad's shelves, history books on Georgia. History, my dad was a historian. I've got all sorts. This is stuff I am listing right now on eBay, and I'll be cross listing over to us. Maybe here's something else in the category of books, and that is comic books. That's a topic all in of itself. Comic books, and then you get into some really interesting niche. Like this is an old child's magazine by John Martin, and if you'd have to study up on Charles John Martin, but I found out about John Martin by looking at postcards. He actually designed or illustrated postcards that are quite collectible, but this entire book was illustrated by this guy. And y'all, each page, and look at there, these illustrations by this guy, if I was a smart cookie, what I would do is carefully select some of them, take them out of here. I hate to do that, but and then mat and frame something simple and sell them framed as original prints. There is a gold mine sitting in my hand right here if I were to do that. So either that or I'm going to sell the entire book. It was for children. Sell the entire book to somebody. I'm going to have to make a decision about that. But many people do take an old book like that and break it up and mat and frame. And these I just pulled. I'm gonna pulled out of my piano bench because I was going to show y'all in the other class in the other hour that I did all the sheet music I've got from the '60s and '70s. And I just started researching what some of this stuff is selling for. Y'all, I've got boxes of this stuff, and some of it is quite old. Um, this is an old Annie Get Your Gun, and y'all not gonna believe how much this stuff sells for. Look at this. Here's Mame. I used to play the piano, and I've got piano music to everything you can think of. Look, this is the Lion King. Can you feel the love tonight? Here's Madonna's You'll See. And this came out when the music first came out. This is like in the world of books, first editions. This is the first sheet music that came out. Look at this one. Oh, y'all. Sorry, bumped the phone. This is Mariah Carey's Hero. I haven't researched the prices on any of these, but look at that. Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You. And look at this one. The Doors, Light My Fire. Oh, y'all, can you imagine how much that sheet music is worth? And then I've got these books of nothing but popular songs from the 60s and 70s. And I still sit down and play these, but it's got photographs of these stars way back in that period, and I've got to decide how to sell that. But y'all can see that I am eat up with stuff I can sell. All right, I told you. Oh, goodness gracious, I'm getting so excited I'm going to have a crash. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, let's real quickly. uh I have got these in my Buy It Now. If you scroll down, at first I've got some children's, very, very collectible. Oh, like there's a John Steinbeck, The Red Pony, that some of you have seen those books before, like Eric Carle's From Head to Toe and Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. That's a 50th anniversary edition. And but what's different is all the prices, I half them. They're in half. So whereas that one was 12, it's now 6. There at Carl, instead of 34, it's 17.50. And the same with all of those. The Steinbeck, the John Steinbeck that comes in its own clamshell was $34. Now it's 17.50. I just halved everything for this show. I may raise it back up after a while. But scrolling on down, you'll see this book, the book collector's price, and it's like $3. And it's how it'll tell you everything I just told you, tell you how to get started, what to look for. There's that one, and hang on. Oh, I'm reaching for the others. And this is, I'd recommend you do this now. If you're interested in doing this, you've got to learn your stuff. This one by Ellis is a really good one. Take a screenshot of it. Well, you've got the picture in the Buy It Now. But $3. I'm only asking $3. And here's Antique Trailers. This is Book Collector's Price Guide, but you can still learn a lot. You'll learn, for instance, which books by George Burns is worth some money. So I'll take sometimes books like this with me to Goodwill, and I'm looking through the shelf and I find a book that looks old, and I'll look the author up to see, okay, oh well, that book's worth $1,850. A no-brainer for a quarter. I'm gonna buy it, take it home and sell it. And then this book is a hardback, and it's quite nice. Catherine Porter, Collecting Modern Books. And it's a little bit more because it is beautiful four-color photographs of, there's, all the famous folks. There's James Joyce. And these are all the big winners, if you were to find any of these books. But you can find a Joseph Heller Catch 22 out there. They're out there. You just got to know what you're looking for. Okay, so if you want one of those, they're in my Buy It Now. And I've not been allowing you to ask me any questions, but we got 2 or 3 seconds left if you want to ask one. But I am available via message. Uh, I'm not going to say if you find a book in Goodwill that you take a photo and send it to me and say, is this one worth anything? Because y'all, this is why you need to start researching, because not one person can answer all those kind of questions. And I'm as a good teacher, I'm going to point you to teach yourself about some of this. You need to learn. All right. I hope y'all enjoyed this. And I didn't sell a thing, I don't think, and that's okay. You folks have been good to me. I've got a huge cubby of jewelry that I sold the other day that I've got to get shipped off. And I appreciate you all very much. And I just wish somebody'd come over here and help me do all these listings onto eBay first, cross list over to Lilyworks Antiques and Collectibles, soon to be one channel, one place. And Rachel, if you're on here, I'm just going to tell you how proud I am that you've done that. That is awesome. I think it will add to the community to have all three of our marketplaces under one title and one place. I think it'll make things easier. I think it's going to be good. And that way, people that are into the jewelry will get exposed to things like rare and first edition books and to ephemera, postcards, greeting cards. And I hope to see some of you scheduling shows, especially with ephemera, because anybody can find postcards and anybody can find old greeting cards in your own shelves and cabinets and drawers. You can find old greeting cards and try it and see if you're successful. Okay, I think the next person is Dee, and she's already live. So we're going to end. I'm going to say bye to you. Love you all. See you all next Friday for a collections chat, if not before. All right, bye.